are going to take you all to the island of Kauai and celebrate Hawaiian holidays on the Garden Island. It is my pleasure to introduce our Kauai designer, Miss Dotty Yadao of Garden Island Party Essentials. And also, Tim, are you there?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce, coming from outside of Philadelphia, my very good friend. Please welcome Tim Farrell, AIFD, AAF, PFCI. I just want to mention that he is one of the most fabulous, most notable educator, designer in the country. I just love Farrell Tim for all that he does with flowers to all our florists and floral enthusiasts. So thank you for joining us, Tim.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this.
We're glad to have you both here with us. We're glad to have both of you here with us.
So Tim, was this your first visit to Kauai?
It was, and I was so excited to be there. That island is definitely well named as the Garden Island because there are just beautiful things growing everywhere on that island. And in addition to that, I was thrilled to be able to be paired up with Dotty as the local island designer. So I met Dotty last year working with HFNA on the Big Island, and I saw her work and was so impressed by the beautiful design she created. So when you invited me to pair up with Dotty and for me to be the guest designer, it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up on.
Well, so are you ready to share with us your Kauai experience?
Absolutely. Dotty, we had a great time, didn't we?
We did.
It was fabulous.
It was so much fun working with you.
Yeah, and I want to tell the viewers here, pay close attention to these videos because you're going to hear some things that are great tips and you're going to see some things that are just unique. So look closely, listen closely, and let's get to it. Let's see what we have.
Thank you for coming today, and I just wanted to acknowledge first off our guest designer, Tim Farrell, AIFD. Thank you, Tim, for making that trek all the way from Philadelphia. Yeah, thank you. I bet it was tough getting on that plane. Thank you. Thanks for the dedication. Yeah, you take it for the team. Yeah, our second designer would be Dotty Yadao, our own. Beautiful as ever, Dotty. Thank you again. Today we're going to have holidays in Hawaii. So that theme was picked because we're going to be using a little bit of the holiday season to incorporate in some of our designs today. So the designers have some fun things in store for you today. So can't wait to do that. The celebrations presentations was selected to educate all of us in Hawaii and on the mainland and Canada to use more Hawaiian flowers in our designs, to inspire, to create, to make people feel the aloha from Hawaii. And HFNA has a project in Canada. We have a USDA program with Foreign Ag Service, and so it's very important. So we have Dr. James Keach, our videographer today. Let's give James some love, show him some love today. It was a privilege for me because I went to AIFD, and many of you may know, but American Institute of Floral Designers. It's the highest accreditation program in the world. And we have some AIFD designers in the room with us. AIFD is the highest accredited program in the world. And there's about like 1,500, less than 2,000 designers in the world, highly trained. They know taxonomy, they know all the elements and principles of design. And we're so happy to have Tim with us because he's an excellent instructor. I know you really, really enjoy his ability to articulate and educate you today. What struck me was that we had a lot of new faces this year. And I think my message to us all is we need to think about that program for Hawaii. We need to support this program because it's going to get from middle school, maybe high school students, go into a four-year curriculum or higher, but consider going into floriculture, nursery, or agriculture for that matter, careers. And we need to build up that pipeline and constantly do that every year. Because as we know, and if you don't, the millennial, the Gen Z, and the Gen Alpha, those 3 generations are upon us. It's all very closely connected. And it's the largest demographic, larger than the baby boomer Gen X. So we're going to have, I mean, like 50 years ahead of us. So I'm very optimistic. I mean, I have 3 sons that have joined our family business. And if we do things right, we bring in on the next generation, if we educate with our college curriculums and have programs to embrace the young, or the young at heart too, into our industry, there's fantastic opportunity ahead of us. Business opportunity for the entrepreneur, the business people. There's a lot of opportunity, not only in Hawaii, not only on the mainland, but this is a global phenomenon that's going to take place. I just wanted to just let you know that it's good. It's a good time to get into agriculture and floriculture. I'm going to also remind you, we have a website. It's a marketing promo website of the association, HawaiiNeotropica.com. Please go to that website. You have videos from past celebrations, activities. You can watch a lot of different videos. We have grower videos, design videos, and some marketing videos there. It shows a little bit of what we've been doing in the state, capturing it on video. So you can watch it anytime at your convenience, yeah? So please take advantage of that. And at this time, I'm gonna ask, you know, we did have a nursery tour on Tuesday. I just want to spend a little time, so I'm going to ask my brother Johnny to talk a little bit about our nursery tour. Johnny?
Okay, and a lot of you went on our nursery tour on Tuesday, and we were blessed with rain. The first location that we went out to was to Seascapes Nursery in Kilauea. And let me just, I have two, over here we go. The Seascapes Nursery in Kilauea, and the owner's name is Rob. And they are, if you have a chance, go check them out in Kilauea. They're before the Kalihiwai Bridge on the left. What's that road, Nani? Huh? It's on Kahili Holo Road. You go all the way up, and it's on the left, okay? And there's no admission, and it's a very nice nursery. They have everything that you can think of over there, okay? And the next place that we went to was the Kauai Agricultural Research Station, and thanks to Dr. James Keach, who hosted us up at the Ag Station. And we had a really fun lunch up there, right? We had a nice lunch, and we got rained out. There were some breaks in the rain where we were able to walk around and look at some of the eucalyptus plantings up there, and the tropical flower plantings, and some of the protea plantings, and the heliconias. So if you're interested, you can call up the extension office, 808-245-4717, and ask for Dr. James Keach, and maybe he'll be able to bring you up and talk to you, or you can go down to the office. He's not always there. This guy's, he does everything. He's in charge of master gardeners and our flower association, and you name it. So thanks again, James. The last place we went to was to Kauai Nursery and Landscaping in Puhi, and everybody knows where that is, and their nursery is fantastic. And actually, our tour participants bought some plants from Seascapes, and they also bought some plants from Kauai Nursery and Landscaping. They have a great variety of everything over there also.
Thank you, Johnny. So thank you everyone for coming to make helping us make this possible. I just wanted to say thanks for joining us. We're going to turn it over to Tim and to Dotty in a little while. So Tim and Dotty, please take it away.
Can you hear? Okay, good. So thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Tim Farrell, and I have been a retail florist for almost 41 years now. I started out my college career, I was going to school to be an accountant. That's what I knew I wanted to do with my life, and I just needed a job. So basically, I was on this path to be an accountant, and I loved it. I loved the debits and credits, the whole, math thing. I loved math all the time I was in school. It was my best subject ever. But I needed a job, so I knocked on 3 different doors to get a job. The first was a pizza shop to be a driver. The second was a dry cleaning shop to be a driver. And the third was a flower shop, and I thought I was going to be a driver. But they had an opening for somebody who was qualified to sweep the floors and fill water tubes. So I fit the bill. So I went in. But I very quickly started to pay attention to what the designers in the shop were doing, and I was very interested in it. So as I looked, and I kind of made it my job to pay attention. I remember about 2 weeks in, the owner of the shop came to me and said, "Here, let me see what you can do, kid." I was probably 19 years old at that time. And he gave me some flowers and gave me a vase and allowed me to make an arrangement. And I can remember that like it was yesterday, and the feeling I got just holding those flowers and making something with it. And it was like none other, and I have never turned back. I just went on that road to be a florist, and that was my goal. So I'm here today. I have had my shop now for it'll be 40 years in September. I was one of those 21-year-old know-it-alls that after working in a flower shop for 1 year, decided I knew everything there was to know about running a flower shop. So I opened my own. Found out real quickly how much I didn't know. So through that, I was able to get involved with different organizations in my local area and contact with different designers and learn from designers. And I got involved with my Teleflora unit in my area, and then became more and more involved, and then became a member of AIFD, what Eric talked about earlier. And that opened many doors for me as far as the experiences I've had in the floral industry. So I've done so many wonderful things. I've had great opportunities to do these things. I'm so thankful to the people that opened those doors to me, but I do feel this is one of those businesses where you never get bored. There's always more things to do, more things to be excited about, more flowers being produced, and the product always changes. So I love what I do, and I hope to do it till I'm 100 years old. So that's my little background story. So Dotty, tell us about you and how you got into the industry and what you do now.
I got into the industry kind of by the back door. My mother was concerned that I was living too footloose and fancy-free in Honolulu. So she said, "I'm going to buy a flower shop so you can come home and you can help me run it." So I thought, oh, well, good idea. So I came home, minimal skills, but I kept trying, they kept getting better. And one day this guy who, I wish I could remember his name, but he used to work on the Rose Bowl parade floats. And he came in and he says, "I see a few things that if you just tweak these a little, your arrangements will improve." And okay, so then he explained the invisible lines and stuff, and my arrangements improved. So I was 30 years old at the time, trying to raise 2 kids in the flower shop, one after the other, and just couldn't do it. My son was too busy. So I started just doing my flowers from home. But I've always kept my hand in, and lately I've gotten more involved in doing weddings, a lot of destination weddings, and I also do tablecloths and tables and chairs and stuff. So that's my story.
That's great. So I was very fortunate. The last 2 years that I worked with HFNA, I was on the Big Island, and I was on the Kona side 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, and last year I was on the Hilo side. But last year I had the pleasure of working with Dotty and getting to see her design. So when they asked me to come to this island, I was thrilled because, one, I have never been to Kauai before, so it was a thrill for me just to come to this island. But number two, I was so excited to get to work with Dotty because I saw some of the beautiful creations she made, and I thought this is going to be a great, collaboration between the two of us to bring some things to you. So the nice part about this is that no matter where you are in your journey, there's always room to grow and always room to learn more. Because we have a very subjective art that we produce in our flower designs. And we may have certain things that we get done really well, and even when we do those well and we share what we do with somebody else, they'll interpret that. And then them, being another artist, we get to see our art through their eyes, and it could be a whole different interpretation of what we do. So the best thing I could advise to anybody who's new in the industry or anybody that's been in this a while, just keep your eyes open and take every opportunity you can to work with other designers. I can remember a time when I was back in my shop when, you know, I would make things and all day long people told me, oh my gosh, you do beautiful work. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. And it was this little world where my head got bigger and bigger, and I had no idea how much I didn't know. But it's when I stepped outside my shop and started working with other designers that, one, it allowed me to just kind of get down to earth, but number two, it showed me the opportunities that there are, and it really let me know there's a never chance to be bored in this industry. So again, working with you, Dotty, this week has been a pleasure, and you've got some great things to show the audience. So why don't we start? What we're going to show for you today, the celebrations is what HFNA has been working on in the last couple of years. For our island, for Kauai, we were given a choice of what we wanted to do, and Dotty and I decided together that we were going to do Hawaiian holidays. And that could be specifically Christmas, or it could just be holidays in general, whatever holidays families or people are celebrating. So we have a holiday program to show you today.
Christmas in July.
Yeah. So we do also understand that there's a lot of people, especially on these beautiful islands, that are destination wedding florists, and they need to have weddings be a part of that. There's holiday weddings as well, aren't there? So we're going to start with some holiday wedding bouquets that would be used during maybe the winter or Christmas holidays. And Dotty, you have two for us, is that correct, to show? Not yet? All right, so we have one already. So why don't you show them your first, and we'll talk about what you did and why you did it. For the new students especially, there is just not this haphazard happening. Many people outside the industry look in and think, oh, you're so lucky you just have to put flowers in vases all day long. There's a real method to what we do, and there's a series of information, we'll say, called the elements and principles of floral design, which are the theory behind the art that we produce. The elements of design, there's 8 elements of design, and those 8 elements are the 8 things that every design has to have in it to be a good, solid, aesthetically pleasing design. The principles of design, there's actually 15 total, but the principles of design are the more aesthetic guidelines that help us keep the elements in order. So we're going to tell you, if you want to take notes, if you have a paper and pen, take notes. We'll tell you all about these today, and it's a really good starting place to keep these things in mind always as you learn more about floral design. So Dotty, first of all, what do you guys think about this bouquet? Isn't that stunning? Tell us about this and your thought behind what you wanted to create and then how it turned out as well.
Well, again, Christmas theme. So we had the tropicals that came in from Greenpoint Nursery, beautiful anthuriums. Then I thought, well, I wanted to put some torch gingers in them because they're always a big hit with the brides that come in from the mainland. They're like, what is that? So Emma beat the bushes for me. And so I have the torch gingers in here. The cymbidiums people are used to seeing, but I mean, they're always beautiful. I put in some hellebores, which is a flower I have never touched in my life, but I thought, wow, I went into the floral wholesaler and I said, oh, what's that? Oh, yeah, okay, I'll take that. So anyway, I kept adding, and then I thought that my daughter-in-law, Yadao Shrimak, she raises these beautiful dahlias, so there are going to be some on the table that you can use in your arrangements too. But I put in her lovely white dahlia there. And then we had the peonies that came in. So the peonies are there. Nice white roses. And then I just decided to color it all with the red anthuriums. And right now the red anthuriums are being a little disobedient. So they're going wherever they want to go. So the trick that I will do when I'm not talking is we have these sticky dots. And I was horrified when somebody told me, oh yeah, why don't you put some glue dots on that and then they'll stay in place. And I'm like, what? By golly, it works. So these little wandering anthuriums, they have a beautiful curve, but they don't want to stay where I want to put them, so I will layer them and glue them in place. But So this is the idea of the neotropical. You know, we have the basic, I guess, the firm structure with the tropical flowers, and then we soften everything up by adding the temperate flowers in. So.
What do you guys think? Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. So I'm going to point out some more things because Dottie's shy about talking about her own work. So I'm going to tell you some other things that she did here that are very beautiful. The first thing for me, like, what's the most dominant thing? What's the most strongest thing about this bouquet to you in the audience? What do you see that's like, wow, that grabs my eye first? The red, white, right? So that is a principle of design called contrast. So it's so strong. This is so severe in color and intense color, and this is just white, that the two are so different from each other, they bring out the best in each other. So she used the principle of design contrast as what basically was the concept for this bouquet. And even this against a white dress becomes even more contrast because then those red really pop again because there's white in the center, white outside, red again. That concept or that principle of design is actually what Tropical Nouveau is all about. So neotropical is a new way of using tropical flowers. That's neo, from the Greek for neo, so for new. So that's the new way of using tropical flowers. Tropical Nouveau is actually blending tropical flowers and temperate flowers together. So they're different. They grow from different climates. They grow in different zones. So it's when you bring them together, they become something new. I've been a floral designer a long time. When I first started, it was a no, no, no. You do not put tropical flowers with temperate flowers. You don't do that. No, no, no. You don't put tulips with, chrysanthemums. They're from different seasons. So everybody had this idea that flowers had to make sense in a certain way. There's other ways to make things make sense together, and that's what Tropical Nouveau is all about. Getting things from different worlds or different growing areas, we'll say, bringing them together. But the fact that there's this strong principle of contrast in this bouquet makes the color make sense. But the fact that the textures and the flowers are from different zones, that's contrast as well too. So that's what she's done in this. Hellebores are usually grown in like the northeastern quadrant of the United States. It's a corm that needs to hit freezing every year to produce the next year again. So you'll never get them to grow and rebloom in your gardens in Hawaii unless you dig them up, put them in the freezer, put them back outside again. Okay, where the anthuriums are the tropical flowers that need this environment, but I couldn't grow these in my yard to save my life either. So we come from very different places. I love the green in here. The hellebores are just, they're really, if you haven't seen them before, they're really interesting flowers and very, very long lasting. But also what I like in this is even within the whites, there's different textures in there. Can you see like the textures are so pretty, and you get the waxy textures of the torch ginger and the anthurium, and then the dahlia steps it down. It's even like a fluffier texture in there too. So again, different textures, contrast in textures is part of this bouquet too. So I think you just did a fabulous job with that. Can I feel that for a second?
It was accidental.
It was not accidental, you know. It's very balanced. It feels beautiful. It holds it very nicely. It's not accidental. She knows what she's talking about. Now, there are a lot of designers which are, I think for the first 15 years of my career, maybe at least 10, but maybe close to 15 years, I would term myself now what I would have called an instinctual designer. I had good instincts as far as maybe color palettes and what flowers looked good together and to get a shape out of things, but I did not know what the elements and principles of design were. I was an accountant. I never had an art class in my life till I read up on them. And when I started reading up on them and studying them and applying them to my work, it helped me become a better designer than I was before, because then I was not only, I had decent instincts, but I also had the theory to our art behind it, and putting them together is a real game changer for any floral designer. So study up on those things. If you studied them years ago, study them again. If you're new to them, get into them and study them. They'll really open up your world to great design. What is your binding method?
Mine is waterproof floral tape because I hate the thought of it falling apart. So I bind the thing up.
So many designers have different techniques they use to do that. I like, believe it or not, I like bind wire a lot. I really like that because it has a little bit of a rougher surface and it's thinner. You like the waterproof tape. Now, the waterproof tape is, again, Each of them have their gives and their takes. Waterproof tape will hold that bouquet great, but once you tape it, you're not sliding flowers in and out at all. It's staying. You got to know that you have the right placement. Bind wire will give you a nice tight bind, but it has a little bit more give, so flowers can move when you want them to, or they might move when you don't want them to as well, too. So, and some people use a zip tie. They'll just get a big zip tie, and like an electrical zip tie, and just zip it closed and get it tight. You know, so many different designers use different techniques. When I came here to the island, the first thing we did, we went to Johnny's farm. And for me, you got to remember, I'm from Philadelphia, from the Pennsylvania area. I cannot walk 10 feet on this island without seeing something that interests me and that's new. These are probably things that you pass by every day and don't see anymore, but to me it's like, ooh. You know, if I had my clippers right then, Johnny would have lost half his farm. But there's just some fabulous things here. So Johnny was so gracious, and James from the university, I mean, they said, what do you want? And they just, you know, we pointed things out, and they were cutting things and bringing them to us. So thank you so much for doing that. So besides the flowers that we have procured, in particular, I was really even more interested in the foliages that you guys have here, because I think that's a market that could explode on the mainland, just bringing in all the Hawaiian foliages, because it's just countless varieties that are here. So, I mean, even this is probably, you're gonna be like, oh, that's boring. I love this, and I get it. It would be like if you came to my backyard and you saw a dandelion and you're like, oh, I'm like, that's a weed. Like, it's just like, we don't do that, you know. But it's so beautiful because look at it. Okay, one of the elements of design for us is form, and form is all about shape, but like, look at those little triangular shaped leaves on there. That's great. Another element of design is color, and look at the color variation within the leaf itself. And then there's pattern, which is another element of design. There's a pattern of the leaves as it goes up the stem. So this little stem that you all take for granted, that's gold to me. So, you know, I love it. And the nice part about it is, like, the newer part, it has a little give to it. It's a little bit bouncy. So as a design element to use, this is great. So what I'm going to do is just take a couple of pieces of the Song of India, the weed, and I'm just going to you know, lightly put it a little bit in my hand. What we call, when I'm going to make this bouquet, there's a couple different ways you can make a bouquet. And the first one is called a hand-tied spiral, where you're technically adding one stem to another, and every single motion has the same exact motion, where you're putting one thing in then another, and the stems always are running almost parallel to each other, but spiraling as they do that. This technique that I'm going to use is a different technique. It's a hand-tied technique. It's called sewing. And what we're doing is we're starting to create a network between some primary flowers that create like an area that we can sew other flowers into so they'll stay in place when we get there. But this area between my index finger and my thumb, or the second finger and my thumb, this is what we call the binding point. Everything has to cross through that point. If you have big hands, you're in luck. If you have small hands, it's tough. So I have big hands. I'm really lucky. I can get a really big bouquet made. But I'm going to start with these, and then look at those. The white owl protea. Again, the pattern. Look at, I mean, looking closely at these flowers, the pattern that's created on the outside, like the scaling on the outside. But look at the black, that almost like velvet or feathery black center. You put that with that, and look how that black just pops out. Like, so cool. So I'm just going to take a couple of those, and I'm going to put these in my hand real quickly. And I'm going to use four. I'm going to put one kind of in the center, and I can add this, but I'm going to keep it like not so tight that I'm strangling it, but just kind of keep it loose so I can move things around if I need to at some point in time. And after that, I think what I would like to put in is this material. This did come from Mayash, but I don't think you have this on the islands. This is called Silver Brunia, B-R-U-N-I-A. But I think it brings up that little bit of gray that you see in here. It'll bring that out in the bouquet as well. But what does it also add to this bouquet? So there's an element of design. This adds to the bouquet. Anybody want to take a stab at what that is? Texture. Yeah, just a very different texture. We as designers, we need to keep texture in mind all the time right now, and there's one really specific reason for it. And that is because many people spend their entire day at a keyboard or with this at their fingertips, and they are what we call textile deprived society. We're a tactile deprived society where we don't have that experience of touch. And for some people, you go through the day all day long and there's none of that there. So walking into a flower shop or being with floral materials gets that brain to start kicking on some engines that have been off for a very long time, and it makes it a very good experience. Because you look at this and you say, oh my gosh, what is that? So instead of the first thing when people walking into a shop being, I smell the flowers, it's, ooh, I gotta touch that. So that becomes very important as an experience with flowers. So the more we can incorporate textural things into our work, the better our work becomes and the more attractive it becomes to consumers and to people that are appreciating flowers. But there, we just have a little bit of that right there so far. Next, aren't they gorgeous? Yeah. This is back to smell again though. Ooh, this is going to add the element of fragrance in this bouquet, but it also is the most contrasting element. These look like little tiny balls of cement. The Brunia, this is as fluffy and as light and this is like whipped cream, you know, putting in here. So it's a totally contrasting textural element to add in there. But look how beautiful if I start putting these in. And this bouquet will not be perfect, but we'll get it as close to perfect as we can. So what if we put these in like this, one in the center as well too, one to the side, you know. Yeah, already. I mean, isn't it just like, there's so many beautiful things inside there. Even the Song of India, like it's still popping in there. So after I do this, what I want to do is instead of it becoming too patterned, so there's a pattern of the peony. A pattern is a place where your eye goes and rides through the bouquet. So we have peony, 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 and they're so big, so dominant that they become like, it's like a 5 on a 5 piece of a dice, like the side of a dice. It's like boom, 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 boom. So in order to break it up a little bit, we're going to take the ranunculus, which are very similar in form, or same in form as the peonies, and put them in between just to start to break up the giant pattern that's there with these little ones in between, and it'll soften that pattern and make it just a little bit more organic looking and acceptable to the human eye than having those 5 giant spots of white with the peonies there. And can you see already how it's starting to come together? All right, so what else do I want to do now? I think I need to just add maybe, that's beautiful in and of itself, isn't it? But let's add a little bit of color to it. So to do that, we're going to add just a little bit of this Lysianthus. I love Lysianthus. It's, again, a garden flower. They look like little tiny roses, but I like that waxy kind of a silver gray foliage that it has too, and the little buds on this is, I think, what make it so pretty. So if we're going to just sew some of this into here, and we're, again, working always towards that binding point, just add a little bit in, and then the next flower I'm going to put into this is going to be one of the stars of the show. So I'll take some anthurium and maybe work some towards the outside. This one might need to go in further just because it has an angle to the flower. And some of the ones in here, I might even actually tuck in so deep that they're actually changing the form of the flower. Instead of it being flat, it kind of curls it in a little bit. But what that does is it gives the bouquet more of a principle called depth. It allows your eye, instead of being like a giant jello mold where everything's on the outside, having that spath a little bit out and then drawing it in a little bit further, it brings you into the bouquet a little bit more and gives the bouquet more depth. So that's another principle of design that we're bringing into this. Anthurium here, and I think I need one over here somewhere. And maybe the last one right about here. And what I do like is see how this one's pointing in. I like to try to get them all so they're facing all maybe outside from the middle. In a bouquet like this, what I want to ask you is, or talk to you about, is the first element of design. And the first one we usually teach is the element of line. And line is where does what's the visual path that your eye follows when looking at a design? What's the line of the design? And you can think in a design like this, it's basically more, up and down. Like your eye kind of hits here first because those heliconia are so strong. So that's the primary line of that design, is up and down. So it could be, it could be vertical, it could be horizontal, it could be diagonal, it could be an S. What is the line of the design? What's the line in this design? Anybody want to guess? So circle's actually the form. It's the shape of the design. So circle, and if this had like bear grass outside that kept looping around and around, there would be a circular line, but there's actually a different line to this that many people knew at one time but forget what it's called. It's called radial line. Okay? Radial line means everything radiates out of one place. So where my fingers are, every single flower radiates out of that spot. And when I first teach design to beginner designers, what I tell them is to imagine fireworks in the sky on the 4th of July, and there's that bright point of light, and everything moves out of that, no matter how far or how close it is to that light, everything moves out of that initial explosion. That's good radial design, and that's what you want to duplicate in a bouquet like this, or maybe in a centerpiece that's on a table, or anything that always goes back to the same spot. So that's pretty so far, isn't it? Yeah, I think we have a little bit more to add to it, though. So the eucalyptus. So what I found is here on the Hawaiian Islands, this is grown as what they call silver dollar eucalyptus. On the mainland, silver dollar eucalyptus is very different. It's the large coin shape that has a tiny stem that kind of is like willowy-like. So we call that silver dollar, but the coloration of this is just gorgeous. So we're just going to add a little bit of it into this. It'll loosen up the bouquet itself, having the extensions coming out, everything radiating out to center, but also that little bit of silver gray in there I think looks so pretty. You know, it's a very, very pale shade of green, and it's a nice contrast to the Song of India that's in there. But we'll have these pieces radiate out from the center, and then we put a little bit around the collar, around the outside. And then let's put some of ironwood. Again, you guys say this is like a weed here, it's all on the beaches, but you know, look how light and ethereal that is, and how it would give a bouquet just some movement by having some of this along the outside. We're just going to add a little bit of this in here. So now I'm probably just going to keep this upside down because this is so long in some parts, it's going to be interfering with me tying it together. And now I might need to get that bind wire again. And what I do is I hold the bouquet like this, and I grab the bind wire, and then, I should hold it this way actually. And then just circle it a couple times, pulling it as I'm doing it. And then I'm going to twist it together. Believe it or not, I have like 2 more buckets of flowers here. I'll never get them all in there. And I actually think it's pretty, kind of the way it is. There's a little bit I want to add in, but let me just twist this if I can. Wouldn't we all love to have a third hand? I mean, wouldn't that come in handy? But, you know, doesn't the ironwood just make it though? Like it just adds something else to it that's like, wow. And like, if you could imagine, you know, probably walking down the aisle, it's just going to give a little bit of bounce and a little bit of motion. So what we want to do is, there was more I wanted to add to this because it's being a holiday wedding. And what if we add the dendrobium garlands? And then maybe what if we just add a couple of these in through here? I probably should have had these on bigger wires, but let me see if I wind them in, I might be able to do it better. Maybe just 3, that's all we need. I think 3 would be great. You got too much paper on you. Let's try this one. So just adding, can you see like those little things you just add in sometimes, they make all the difference, and it's the things that'll really be good for your business. Because you can make the most perfect bouquet, but if it's similar in look to what everybody else is doing, people aren't going to be talking about you. But if you add a little something extra in, that's what people will talk about, your business and what you do. And yeah, she could be about 7 feet tall, couldn't she? Yeah. But like, wouldn't it, I mean, even just like kind of like held down and cascading down along the side could be really fun. But like, look at all that glitter and glitz and, you know, beautiful things. So wouldn't that be a fun bouquet to make? Yeah. There we go. Thanks, Johnny.
What would you charge for that?
As much as I possibly could get. You know, if I had to guess, that's probably about a $500 bouquet. It is amazing what people spend on weddings, line item things, you know. So the bride's bouquet, you know what, if she spends $6,000 on her dress, and you know she's spending, you know, $2,000 to have a limo for the day and $15,000 for the band, and they're flying people. I mean, don't be shy about an item that's $500. When you do that, you can then give them the service that has to happen to go with that wedding as well too. For me, the material cost is not the biggest expense, it's the time. It's from the very first phone call till the 29th phone call the day before the wedding, and staying up the night before and doing something that didn't come in till late, or searching out a product that there's so much service involved, and do not be afraid to charge for that. But like a bouquet like that, that's going to be something people are going to talk about. It's going to be on Instagram. It's going to be on Facebook. You'll make her day so special with something like this. And again, even just thinking of that, like adding, simple, cheap plastic Christmas balls. It just is a little tiny accent that adds into it and can make a big difference. But yeah, don't undersell yourselves. The market has the money. What my philosophy has always been was everybody doesn't have enough money for whatever. The only way we can get them to spend money is when we create a need. So when you say, we'll use this phrase, will you allow me to make something so special just for you that it will take everybody's breath away? Do you know how many times a bride's going to say no? Think about it. Really think about it. And the average, weddings are, some people spend $200 on their flowers for a wedding, and some people spend $200,000 on flowers for their wedding. It really does run the gamut. You need to know the bride a little bit, but you can figure a lot out by knowing her dad's address, knowing the venue that it's at, and the time of year. You can figure a lot out about what would be appropriate for this. But also, if you just talk to her and ask her about the wedding, the more details you hear about the wedding, the more you'll understand how big that budget is. And what you need to be is the vendor that creates the bigger need. Okay, I want that bouquet as opposed to the cannolis at the dessert table. I'll give up that to get this, because that's going to be in all my pictures. Yeah, it's going to be there for a long time. It's going to be in the pictures, and you're doing both her a favor, but yourself a favor too at the same time by being the one that stands out. So don't be afraid of it. So what I wanted to do was create a Christmas-themed armature, something very different, but something we can use. And what I was lucky enough, a friend of mine from AIFD, her name is Valerie McLaughlin. She lives near me, and her husband's a welder. So I sketched out this thing that I wanted to create, and the biggest problem is to ship things to Hawaii is so expensive. So this had to go in my suitcase. So this stops here, and this top comes off. And all these pieces come apart, and these pieces in between to give it the depth all come out. So it comes apart into like 17 or 18 pieces, and it has legs that actually sit this into the base. I know, wouldn't you love to see the TSA guy looking in my suitcase, right? Yeah, he's like, who's this MacGyver guy? What's he got in here? Okay, I get the wire and the steel, but what's the yarn doing in here, right? So I originally painted this whole thing like a really, really bright green, that lime green, that bright green paint that's available from Design Master, and it was too much. So I toned it down with this cottage green, and then I found some yarn, and not everybody, lots of designers are using yarn now. And I've done this before, and I spend hours and hours in hotel rooms kind of winding it around, and I found like such a great solution. What I do is I get a piece of this is rustic wire. And this is also, we're going to be working with this afternoon. This is produced by the Smithers Oasis Company, and it's heavier than bind wire. It's a heavy wire to begin with. It has like a jute wrapping on the outside. It's available in this moss green and brown and natural as well too. But I take a piece of that, and say if the piece is about 3 feet long, about this long, what I do is I found this little keychain at the Home Depot, and it's one of those keychains where if you hook it on your belt, but it spins. So I take a piece of bind wire, I tag it onto the handle of a cabinet at the shop, and I put the drill in this side, and I spin it, and I don't spin it, somebody else spins it, and all I do is I stand there with the wool and just run it up and down, and literally this is done in like 90 seconds. You can get this much. For the fatter areas like this, I took a piece of wax paper and just wrapped some masking tape around it, or packing tape, and it just made it a little bit bulkier, so I go around it and just kind of get some fatter areas to it. But this has been a game changer for me, because I am not the most patient person in the world, and to sit there for hours is not my game. It's just not my game. But just, if you just stick that in the drill, I won't do it now, you can understand. Just put it in there, close the drill up. This little thing the whole thing spins, and you can get that rotating at full speed, and just have somebody hold the drill and just run the wool up and down, and it's so great. But again, this is that texture again, that contrasting thing, but visually also, the blues, the browns, look how this all brings it all up into here. So there is a principle of design called unity, and I think unity is one of the most unpaid attention to principles that we have as floral design. And so many times we see a container and flowers, and the two look like they just weren't meant to go together. Okay. If I could show you, for example, on the back table right here. So I made that this morning with some of the flowers that we had left over because we had so many beautiful flowers. But the only thing I could find to put this in was a silver ice bucket from the back kitchen. So there was a silver ice bucket and there was all these flowers. I thought, I got to do something different. So I literally just wrapped some tea leaves around there, used the bind wire. It looks like a natural vine or a jute, and it connects to what's there. And it allows the whole composition to look like it belongs together as opposed to container and flowers. So this is, with the color of the yarn here, this is color-wise what visually ties you in what's here. But what I really wanted to do was actually soften the lines of this really hard tree shape that I have. And by having this kind of go up and around, I think that's what we've accomplished with that. So it's kind of a cool structure in and of itself, right? Yeah. The nice part about it is there's so many different things you can do with this, but we're gonna just put some flowers in and see where it goes. I really didn't plan a whole lot with this. So what I might do is I might have to spin it towards me and keep spinning it back to you every once in a while. All right, so what we're gonna start with is, oh yeah, this is gonna take some work here. So the heliconia, like look at the color, like just fabulous, isn't it? So we're gonna I have 2 heliconia to use in this, and like look how different. You wouldn't expect like this color and red to go together. And it really doesn't go together, but it's gonna be really effective as far as a piece of art. But look at that, if we put this in here, this is, yeah, let's do this one first. What if I put this right about here? What I want to do is just at least visually have it make sense like it's going into the container. Even if it doesn't go all the way down, have it like it's going into the container. So I might bring it up a little bit. And to secure this in place, I don't need much. The stem doesn't go all the way down, but what if I just get a pin and pin this up into the yarn that's there. See if that will hold it in place. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to take a second one and maybe drop that off on an angle and put that in there. And if I just pin that in place here, yeah, that's a good start. Then I took some of this incredible passion vine and I took all the leaves off it. What I wanted to do was to change up the line movements from something, okay, back to line again. So the element of line, we have 2 different ways we can categorize line. The first is static line, and that means it stays on pretty much the same plane. So one of these lines on this side of this triangle is static. Your eye stays right here and rides on that same plane the whole time. Dynamic line is when we add something to it that makes it look like it has more dance to it or more rhythm or more motion. And that's what we're going to do by adding in this passion vine to this. So we're going to take the passion vine and actually get it into the vase and work it maybe back and through, because this will help give us depth in the design. And this one maybe up here. And we'll take another piece on the other side. And we're going to add that in. There's also within line, there's 2 other ways to categorize line. And the first is called actual line. And that's when your eye actually goes from one place to another in the design. It can follow like this, even though it's dynamic, it's an actual line that your eye can ride along here. There's something else that's called implied line, and we'll say with, let's say with this. If we go from this anthurium to this anthurium to this anthurium, your eye connects like elements and creates a line movement with them. So we can make those same placements knowing that the human mind has a way that it starts to figure these things out and will create that line that you want to create without them actually being connected to each other. You know, I like this passion vine just like this in here. I think this is kind of cool. You know, so there's kind of like this chaos happening, but there's a swirling motion. There's lots of things happening here. Rhythm in design is also one of our principles of design, and rhythm has to do with literally the visual interpretation of what music would be in the design. Where does your eye go? How fast does it go? Does it stop and move to different places? What is that pattern of sound that's interpreted with vision in design? And that's how we create good rhythm in design. So this is, Johnny cut these for me, this cardboard palm. I thought this was just fascinating. And again, what I wanted to do is I wanted to change it up. This is just way too big, way too heavy, but look at just by stripping off all the leaves. It becomes very linear, and as you can see, as far as rhythm and design, if your eye were to find this in a design and want to go from here to here, we'll just say it travels at about 10 miles an hour, because it stops at every one of these along the way and hits it. If your eye found the same length in another design like this, can you see how your eye goes like 60 miles an hour to here and then finishes out? So that's how we can actually control the human mind when it's looking at our designs. I know, isn't it? Like, I'm hearing some hums. Isn't that fascinating? Like, the things that we can do are just incredible with our designs when we understand what's happening. So it controls the eye both in place and in speed as far as where it goes. So we've changed that one material to be much more linear. The other thing to me is this, like this, implies new growth in my design. This looks like a much more mature piece. This looks like it's something that's newer. Even though it has leaves taken off, it just looks newer. So there's different things you can start to figure out psychologically to kind of play with it. Anybody here who knows Hitomi knows this is Hitomi's favorite flower, right? It's almost her logo, right? Like her signature thing. But we're going to take the Gloriosa, and what we're going to do is now balance these cardboard palms with the Gloriosa. So we're going to take some of these and just kind of work these in here. So balance is also a principle of design. And for balance, when I teach balance to my beginner students, what I try to tell them is imagine the design itself. It needs to be physically balanced so it doesn't fall over, but it also needs to be visually balanced. And visually balanced means understanding, again, that things have weights to them, and you're properly putting those weights in at the right places. But what we do is we say, hey, think of the scenario of two kids on a seesaw on the playground. You cannot have the really chubby kid and the really skinny kid equidistant apart in order to get balance on the seesaw, right? The chubby guy's got to scoot his way towards the center, and sometimes the skinny guy's got to hang way out on one side. So by looking at this as being a little bit visually more heavy, these are the chubby kids, this is the skinny guys over here. They got to come over here and really maybe extend out a little bit further than this to get that balance happening in the design. And that's how we talk about balance in design. And then, look at these cool guys. Aren't they just gorgeous? So what I've done for those is, for mechanic, I took a little bit of that same yarn, and we just have some water tubes just wrapped around the water tube. So if we, let's say, for example, we'll probably put these in first. Let's say we're going to, well, so some of them can probably go right into the vase. So let's address that first. We'll put them into the vase. So if there was water in the vase, they would have water. We'll say that, right? Let's put some right here. Did I make it? Nope. Missed it. Who else hates when that happens? Okay, so just kind of put that there. The next thing we'll do is we're going to take some and put some in different spots, maybe here on the design. And I'm going to take this water tube and just tie it to the structure with a little bit of yarn that's left over, and then stick the flower stem into it so it does have a water source. So this is one of those things that I would love to do something like this for maybe not a wedding reception, but if it was a corporate party or something like this. And it is one of the teachings I like to share with people that talk about the difference between advertising and PR. So the definition, in my definition, will say of advertising is you finding a way to pay somebody so that you can tell the rest of the world how wonderful you are. It's basically what it is. Come to us for flowers. I'm the best flower shop. I'm going to give you, $200, put an ad in this book or whatever it is, web listing, something like you're paying somebody to do that. PR is when you do something that allows somebody else to tell the rest of the world how wonderful you are. So say if we had this entry piece, and let's say there was a big benefit happening in town, and say if it was for, a big fundraiser for, a new hospital that was opening up a brand new wing or something like this. If you were to call the chairman of that organization and say, hey, I would like to bring a piece to have at your entry table, and they say, oh, that's very nice. That would be great. Thank you so much. And what are they expecting? Yeah, a pretty little arrangement to have on the table. And you show up with something like this, who's the hero? You are the man or the woman, or, I mean, it is like the best thing ever because you've created like a work of art. And what's going to happen all night? People are going to talk about your shop and this arrangement. And it's in a primary spot, primary exposure. And the people out there are going to say, oh my gosh, the people from whatever it is, Smith Flowers, they were so generous, they did this just for us. I think I could probably, there's other things, it's like bamboo foliage. Oh yeah, I could put a couple bamboo foliage in here. And maybe what I'll do is I actually have some red arachnus orchids. Let's put some of them in there too, just to give it a little something else. And maybe I'll just keep the red towards the back, just to kind of bring your eye back through again and connect the red that's on the top to what's down there. But really, I mean, you could do so many different combinations of flowers with this same thing, just depending on what you're able to get on the market or what, the great specials that maybe Johnny had on special that week or Greenpoint Nursery had. That'd be fabulous. But like, wow, wouldn't that be a statement piece? Okay. This is what I call the where'd you get that look. And I think that in big business, the term that has been driving businesses for the last 20 years is branding. Brand, brand, brand. Become the brand, become this. And many businesses spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to have the same color boxes, the billboards, the paintings on the side of trucks, packaging, this and that everything kind of leads to your brand. You do something like this and somebody goes, oh my gosh, where'd that came from? I'll just use my shop name. It came from Farrell's Florist. Where'd that come from? It came from Farrell's Florist. That's great. You do something for a wedding and people start asking, oh my gosh, the flowers are beautiful. Where'd they come from? It came from Farrell's Florist. Where'd it come from? It came from Farrell's Florist. Do that 2 or 3 times and all of a sudden, if this was say the 4th time, people walk in and say, oh my God, that's gorgeous. I bet it came from Farrell's Florist. Ding. You've just used this to brand your business in a way that customers know you're the person to go to. I am a firm believer. We have the most beautiful product in the entire world to work with, but what's up here is what can make the big difference. I think of retail florists especially as being a very honorable profession because I think we get to take some of the most beautiful things that God has created and make something else beautiful with them. But our process of doing that is usually to help one human being express emotion to another human being. And that I think is a real honor and a gift. And I take it very seriously. So when we can make those connections with people that way and do that, our profession isn't a very honorable profession. And it can give us a great career and it can really connect us to our customers in all the important moments of their life. So that's my entry piece. It could be for wedding, it could be for corporate, it could be anything. Any questions we got on this? No? Oh, you're a quiet group, right? Yeah. You got one?
Same question. What would you charge me?
Oh my God, that's the question of the day. I am guessing that's probably about $350 if I could get the prop back all the time. Yeah. There's some premium flowers in there, but I mean, this also uses a lot of space. Let's go back to the elements of design. Here's the 8 elements of design. These are the 8 things every design has to have in it to be a good design. Line is the first one, the visual path. Form is the second thing. This design has basically a triangular form. If you were to kind of try to put a shape on the outside, it's a triangular form. That bouquet has a rounder form, but then it has a dendrobium. So form has to do with the shape of the bouquet or the shape of the arrangement, but also we understand that everything in the design has a form. Are we going to repeat forms like put round peonies and round roses and round ranunculus in a round bouquet so that's that repetition of the same thing that gives it strength? Or are we going to change up forms like round protea and heart-shaped anthurium and star-shaped lilies and this unusual shaped heliconia to give visual interest with form in the bouquet? That's line form. Space is the third element of design. We can use a very little bit of space and have everything crowded together, or we could really use space. If you look at even like the windows that the vines carve out, is these areas of space that really become just as important in the design as some of the flowers are in the design as well too. Space is the one that beginning designers have trouble with. They keep thinking, I want to fill the holes. I want to keep putting product in. We usually tell beginning designers, finish it and take 20% out. It'll be better than it was when you ended it. That's usually a better rule of thumb because space can be very important in the design. Color, we talk about color harmony and, is it monochromatic? Is it analogous? What is it? But as we learn in any form of art, we learn about color. We apply that in floral design as well too. Pattern, we talked about that earlier. What kind of patterns are achieved either in the placement of the flowers or within the materials themselves? Line, form, space, color, pattern. Texture, we talked a lot about texture already. We have that. And does anyone know what the last element of design is? That's a principle, actually. Contrast is actually a secondary principle. Yes. The last element of design is fragrance. Fragrance. And it's something that many of us have not paid attention to either in recent years, but I believe it's very important to have something fragrant in every design. Because there's nothing, I think, more disappointing to a customer than to come up on a design and there's nothing there. So including something is really, really important. As a designer, I would challenge you to be where I am right now with fragrance. I don't want to just include fragrance. I want to create with fragrance. So what I'm into right now is within florals, finding things like sweet peas, which have a very light, sweet fragrance, and combining them with something like Cymbidium orchids, which have more of a dominant, spicy fragrance, that those two things blend together and become something new. So we've created a new fragrance by consciously thinking about dominant and subordinate fragrances, what blends together, what contrasts nicely, and we take those cues from the perfume industry. They do it all the time, but when we do it really well, we can have a very experienced floral designer become blindfolded and walk up to an arrangement and not be able to identify what's in there because those things have fused together to create something new. So I'll challenge you, try to think about fragrance, think about the properties of dominant, subordinate fragrances, and how can you blend them together to create with fragrance. So that's basically our 8 elements of design. And we'll talk more about principles in a little bit, but yeah, all these, and they're all really interconnected. You can't isolate one without going to another.
Wow, that was fabulous. Huh, Johnny?
It was very unique designs, and I was educated.
Oh, gosh, yeah. We had a classic textbook lessons on elements and principles of design. We learned it all. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much to both of you. Now, we're going into a question and answer segment at this point. So I think she told me, did you have some questions prepared?
Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
Because I know that Tim mentioned at some point that he got to see some really great foliages and that he thought that there'd be a real market for foliages, especially on the mainland. Some of us in the mainland maybe haven't seen some of the cool stuff. And so which was your favorite new discovery, Tim? That's my question.
Oh, there was a few. I really did enjoy working with that ironwood. It's something that I'd only really seen in pictures, but didn't realize how much movement it had to it and how beautiful it could be in adding to a design. But I got to say, as far as the commercial market, I think there's a real opening there for some leaves from the Anthurium genus. I think some of those leaves are just as beautiful as the flowers that are produced in the fields and in the growers' areas that we have. And also right now, I'm really into vines. So I know all over the island of Hawaii, there are vines with tendrils and things that, I mean, really add to the line and to the dynamic movement within design. So yeah, I think there's some real potential for growers in Hawaii to go out and harvest some things and even propagate them and make them more popular and used for the mainland.
Okay, so Johnny, do you have a question there? You have a question there, Johnny?
Yeah. Are you asking me if I have a question?
No, are there questions from the audience there?
At this time, there's no questions.
Well, I think there was, someone mentioned that because this was Tim's third time at HFNA conference and presenting, do you see in the 3-year time that you have been doing this, an increased interest in Hawaiian tropicals and foliages on the mainland?
I do. And Hitomi, I think a lot of it is thanks to you for your development and promotion of Tropical Nouveau. I think people are understanding now how much we can use those beautiful flowers together. And just like Dotty, like your creation with your bouquet, you were so interested in using the hellebores because that's something you had not seen before, but something that people on the mainland are more used to. We feel the same way about the tropical flowers now. If we get new materials and we see new materials that we haven't had before, we want to experiment with them and we want to use them. And we really need to promote this with the floral designers on the mainland because we're the gatekeepers to the consumers. So we need to be the ones to source things and bring things in and to allow our consumers to see them so that they can appreciate them and then allow us to use them more in our work. But I definitely think in the last 3 years, there's been a great resurgence of the use of tropical flowers in that Tropical Nouveau fashion.
That's wonderful to hear. So we have a question for Dotty. So we see that you do a lot of wedding work there on the island, the Garden Island, Garden Island Party Essentials, right? So you do a lot of event work and a lot of wedding work. So what's the direction of wedding work for you? I know that you showed a beautiful, lovely bouquet, which was primarily, like it was also Tropical Nouveau, right? So is that the popular look for you guys?
Well, intentionally or not, I like to combine the two. I've always liked to combine the two. And I enjoy the bride that isn't expecting it, getting it and saying, wow, I never expected anything like this. I love it. I mean, like Tim said, your head just goes like that. But, you know, the thing I think that if people in the mainland are going to be doing this more and more, probably a good thing for us to do is to educate them on how to take care of tropicals, how to get more longevity out of them. Because, like, for example, everybody's been hearing about the hydration chamber now. This lei is 2.5 weeks old. And what I did was I put a damp napkin under the lei in a plastic Ziploc bag, sprinkled a little water, not too much, put it in the refrigerator. 2.5 weeks later, it feels fresh. The big heliconias that Tim had in his arrangement, you never refrigerate those. The tips will die instantly, but you want it to stay longer, spritz it with water, put a plastic bag over it, choke it, you know, on the stem. Leave the stems in deep water. Never refrigerate anthuriums. You can refrigerate orchids, but never anthuriums. And actually, if you refrigerate stem orchids, you get less lifetime on them. So as long as you can keep them in an air-conditioned room, you know, not let them get warm, they'll give you 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you know. But if you refrigerate them, take them out, put them into your bouquet, shortens it. You get a week, week and a half, you know, on the stem orchids. So real different ways of handling tropical flowers. Foliages, same thing. Bag them, but don't keep them wet. And you'll have lots more time with them.
Wow, those are great tips. It's always good to get tips from the local Hawaiian florist. They have worked with him for so many years and have given Lots of great tips. And I know that for myself, Johnny has always been from Kauai anyway, some of the best tips that he's given me on how to care and handling of flowers as well. Yeah.
We have a question.
Johnny, dear. Oh, good. Excellent.
A question came in, and this question is directed to Tim. The question is, how often are brides requesting bouquets with trailing features?
It has begun again. As we can say, 20 years ago, there was many, many cascading bouquets. And then there was a series of about 2 decades where everything was very round and very uniform in shape. It's like fashion. Anything that is seen enough needs to have a change to it. And that's where we're getting more cascading bouquets now. So I think those beautiful garlands of dendrobiums are a fabulous element to add to a bouquet because they truly allow gravity to do their thing with that. And that's really where the concept of a cascade comes from, where things are just kind of dripping down and falling down as gravity would pull them, as opposed to maybe, spokes on a radial. So, I love the dendrobium garlands and I love trailing features and bouquets. And I think we're seeing it. We're going to see a lot more in the future years to come.
Thank you, Tim. This is great. We have another question. The question is, again, for Tim. It says, in the tree armature that you created, were the plant materials with a water source?
So some were not. The heliconia, both those were long enough to go into the vase, so that was long enough. The vine that we put in there was able to go into the vase itself, the passion vine. The orchids, some of them did not reach far enough in there, so we had to have them in little water tubes. Mm-hmm. And there was another flower, I'm trying to think of what other flower, the anthuriums, actually, the green anthuriums, we put in water tubes as well. So everything did have some type of water source. Some of them were in water tubes in the structure, and some of them were actually in the vase that held a good amount of water.
I'm sure that's very helpful to our viewers. I wanted to mention that between the efforts of Hawaii Floriculture Nursery Association and with the combined efforts of Hitomi and Colin and the committee on our HFNA organization, we have created a book called Neotropica. And we are in the process now of updating all those fabulous flowers and foliages that we've been talking about today. So be on the lookout for it. It's coming up very soon, and you just go to neotropica.com, and I'm sure it'll be available from that website of ours, just for your information.
Yeah, it's actually very exciting. There's a new edition coming in because it will have some of the new varieties of UH-generated varieties of anthuriums that haven't been seen before. So there's some new things coming in. I think it's really wonderful that we are always, Hawaii's always on the trailblazing, the edge of, some new things and new materials. And as you have, Tim, seen every time you come over to Hawaii, don't you see things that you think, oh my gosh, that has real potential? For some of you, I know that, you had mentioned that the Dracaena, that's a weed to them, but oh my gosh, it's a treasure for us, isn't it?
Great. This has been just wonderful. Thank you, Dotty. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Dotty.
So much for
Great job.
For your time and your passion for what you do. I'm sure our audience was very pleased with the presentations today.